Hi guys, welcome back to another video of NetEyes. In this video we're going to continue with relations. In the previous video you've already seen some of it and we went through it a little bit. Now we're going to dive even a bit deeper and show you some other things as well. But before we dive into the application, I just want to point out this very important wiki page. This wiki page will show you and tell you everything you need to know about relation and contexts. The short introduction is, whenever you are looking from a perspective of a node in the database, you always have some form of context with you. So for example, when we look at the build information of a node, all of these variables that you see are already present by default because they are within the context of a node. This also includes for all the variables that are in the domain or within the region, for example. So you don't need to use a relation to get those. That is already done under the radar, so they already are at your disposal before adding anything else. So let's do a quick test on that. We go to our node config. We're gonna use the same router again, and we're gonna see what it is we can retrieve without using a relation per se. So for example, we have node class over here. So let's see how that goes. Right, so we can just type in node class, we do evaluate, and the result is lab. And we can see that also in the presentation of R1 over here as well. Also, if we dive into domain, then we could, for example, extract this piece of information, syslog server number 2. If we add that here, it should show and the IP address that goes with it. As you can see, IP addresses are highlighted in blue for readability, because most of the time that is very important information for the network engineer. Okay, so and the same applies for regions as well. So we get the ICE region, for example. We use this DNS server. We can grab that as well, just using the variable name. And there we go. Right, so now that's all within the context. So you can use that without doing anything else. It is already there, it's already present. So that includes domain, region, and what we call the site router, which is essentially a table in the database. Might be wise just to show you that as well, because those are just the built-in relations that we use for everything. So again, we go to our favorite tool in the design, that is design relation test. We grab the device that we were gonna look from the perspective, and we scroll down to the relation that is called site router. So again, a whole bunch of SQL magic right there, and that would result in everything that we need to know from the R1 perspective. So that includes the node class that we just used, but also the FQDN, all the things that are represented in the front end that we see when we look in the main and look on the node perspective. All of this will be at least present here. Right, so a whole bunch of information. The same applies, for example, for domain, right? Again, it is within the context, but you can grab that information from here as well. So R1 is definitely connected to the ICE domain, and that is, for example, where we get the TACAC server, the DHCP server, or anything that is present in this database. Okay. Now that we got the easy ones, and from the context perspective, which everything is the easy part, we're gonna continue. So now that we got the context clear and see that everything from a perspective is already there, we're gonna look at something more difficult, which is the indirect templates using relations. So those are the templates that we've touched upon already by using them. Now this time I'm gonna explain them to you. So we dive into the templates in the sub-templates, and there we got the interface VLANs. And then, for example, we got this line right here. We're going to copy paste that and use it in our evaluate just to show you what it does. Again, this is using the interface relation that is right here and right here. So that's the relation part. Here is the column name that we're going to use. And let me just grab the interfaces from the relation test to see what it is we're looking at and what we're going to use. So here we got the overview of all the ports that are available on this router. And from here we're going to look at the column name, which is port template. As you can see, each of those ports are the user template at the moment, but this information is what we're going to use. So we're looking at the port template from the relations interfaces, as you can see right here. So from the interfaces relation, we're going to use port template to retrieve the user port template. And that is exactly what is being done in this part. So that is one substitution. So we could rewrite this at user, which is the port template that we looked at, using the relation interfaces, right? So this would essentially mean the same thing. If I would uncomment this, this would result in 5 ports, right? So we got port 1 to 5, all is there. If I do the same thing for the second line, you would see that it still would result in those same 5 lines, where the user template is used to execute and use all of the information that is available on each of the rows in the relation, so from the SQL query. So again, the user template is used and all of the variables that are required are available within this relation. So if we would verify that specifically for the user VLAN, we go to the templates, port templates, and there we got the user VLAN. You would see that there are a bunch of variables here. For example, these 3: port type, slot ID, port ID, which are part of this query as well, of the output, where you can see that the port type is used, a slot ID is used, and a port ID is used. And that is done for every line in that specific query, right? So now that we see that this is the same output, you can understand that in this case the template that is part of the query, so the part of this column, if you will, that specific port template is used along with all the information that is on the same row, and that is being executed and being substituted within the template, giving the entire configuration, right? So once you have this indirect relationship, once you understand that part, you can build very powerful one-liners which will generate or can generate a lot of configuration. To give you a few examples, generating these ports, generating subnets, but also generating VREFs, or even access lists for firewalls or for your router, for example. So using such a relation can give you either 0 or multiple entries as an output, which with one line you can generate an entire firewall configuration by specifying all the permits or denies or how you wish to put it in your lines. Okay, so if we go back to our test, we have this portion saying port template at interfaces, which would result in user in this case, and we load the interfaces relation again against it. Okay, I hope this is clear, because there we can continue, right? So from the interfaces we could define filters, right? So maybe you don't want all of the values. This is one of the things we did in the previous video also with the port reserve. Again, we could say, okay, last time we did it something like this, where we had the port reserve 1 at interfaces, right? But this could have a different output since this is indirect. So let's have a look. Again, you see now still 5 ports have been generated because at least one of them had the port reserve in use. As you can see here, let's go back over the relation where we can have an overview. So again, there is at least one port that has that information. So maybe we wish to do that differently and use other types of filtering on them. So we go over to a different syntax where we can filter on the information in the database. Again, same line, but now we place the filter on the end. So here we could say port reserve 1 equals 10. Very specific, but here we can see that it will only generate the information for that specific port where that column equals the value that I've given, right? So that's this one. So that is a little bit different line than the previous video where we had the port reserve 1 at interfaces. So as you can see, this configuration is a little bit different than we did last time, because there we didn't use the indirect template retrieval and using the relation against it. But there we had the port reserve that we were looking for, port reserve 1 at interfaces. Right, so that was the test that we were looking for. So if an entry within the output of the relation, so within the output of these 5 entries would hold true, so port reserve 10, then we would execute a line that is behind it. For example, we could say port, which could be the port ID at the same relation, so interfaces. So that would be port number 1 in this case, right? According to the information in the database, has value of the port reserve 1 at interfaces. And this would say, okay, port 1 has value 10, but no other information would be printed on the screen, right? So we could say evaluate and see indeed that the port 1 has value 10, and this was the other line that is present here. So right, so there it executed for every interface, or every line I should say, that has the port reserve 10. I hope that has been clear. This is all about getting information from the database, including the filters and things, because in next videos we're going to look at VLAN templates where you might want to filter on if a VLAN template is set or not, if a value is present or not, and depending on it you wish to execute different code. I hope this has been informative. Thank you for watching.